Hi, today we are in San Mateo in the Platfora office. Hi Ben, who are you and what do you do?
Well, thank you. So I'm the founder and executive chairman of Platfora. We're a big data analytics, big data discovery company, which means we let regular people inside companies that generate a lot of data, we give them the tools to be able to visually analyze, understand, make sense of all that data so that they aren't just waiting for the IT organization. They can sit down in front of a beautiful experience in front of a web browser and potentially make sense of terabytes or petabytes of transactions, customer interaction data, machine data, and do really interesting actionable things from that data.
Cool. How did you come up with the idea and what did you do before?
I was running product at a company called Greenplum that was a database company doing analytics types things here in the Bay Area, and it was bought by EMC, and so I didn't stick around very long at EMC, and post that I was thinking about some of the changes happening in the industry, and we saw the early signs of this new technology called Hadoop. And for those, some of you know what Hadoop is, but it's sort of an open source technology that lets you store very large amounts of data and process it very efficiently in an open source way. But also saw that that wasn't going to be enough. That could be the data lake to land all this data. But how do you enable the business to make sense of it, to enable the new workflows, to unlock value for the business? And we saw a lot of people just trying to do the old practices in this new world, and we said there's a much better way, much better architecture. So I was sitting at a cafe in San Mateo, just around the corner, in June of 2011, with a couple other guys, and literally drew on a napkin the idea of this new approach, this new architecture, and just had this idea that maybe everyone's thinking of it wrong, that if you change the way you think about the role of Hadoop, if you think about building this new type of stack on top of it, you could create this whole different level of experience, and almost like we thought about the iPhone as having changed the way you think about phones. If you talk to somebody who, before the iPhone, and try to explain it to them, they would have no idea what was different between that and a normal phone, but when they see it, they understand. In the same way, can we create an experience that delights and makes working with these massive amounts of data easy for regular people and totally transforms the metaphor? And we saw a way to do that, and that was the beginning.
And did you sit down with just some your co-founders or with just some people for getting feedback or some investors?
A couple of folks who were potentially going to be part of the company. One of them was briefly involved, and he went on to start another company of his own, and is doing fine. The other guy has been sort of very involved and was a long-time employee with the company, and now is taking some time off. But it was kind of great to sort of see the sort of early group, and then from there, very quickly started to build a team of just fantastic technologists, engineers, designers, product people to start to bring this to life.
What was the next step? So after the meeting, what actions did you take to really start a company?
It was very clear to me that doing this was going to be it was going to be a really big idea. It was a really big idea that I had very high confidence that we were going to be able to go change the world in a meaningful way with this. But it wasn't something you could just do on the cheap. We needed to get a great team together. We needed to really build something, an organization to go execute on this. So, very first thing I did was think about a few tracks. One was, how do we write this down, write up what we're doing to make sure we know what we're talking about. And so we started writing up very quickly a provisional patent that sort of sketched out the idea and started to sort of demo prototype a little bit. In parallel, I started thinking about fundraising because this wasn't an idea where we could go build it all the way and then go raise money.
Yeah.
If this was going to work, we had to go raise a significant amount of capital from the get-go. And fortunately, I had a pretty good reputation and experience and good access to investors. And so, I quickly went out, essentially assembled the pitch deck, went out to some early angel investors with the idea that I was going to be quickly, within a couple of months going out and raising a larger round. Got a few of them on as good social proof, these guys who really believed in the concept, and then went out and talked to the big players, the Series A investors, and folks like Andreessen Horowitz and Sequoia and many others, talked to those guys. And was very fortunate that within only 2 or 3 months of founding the company, had been able to close collectively about $7.2 million, led by Andreessen Horowitz, with Sadehill Ventures, with a collection of really great other angel investors, and suddenly had this opportunity to really make it, do it right.
Cool. And so normally when you have a seed round and then you have going to the next step, proving something, and then raising in the Series A. In your case, it was very, very fast. So only like 2 or 3 months in between.
Less than that, maybe a month and a half.
Yeah, or even less. What did you prove? Because if you would have known, okay, actually I'm totally fine right now, I can already raise Series A, also based on a napkin, basically.
So I made a calculation, and I think this is a very situational thing, which was, if I would have just walked into the series to try to pitch a Series A, people have said, we'll give you a seed round, get started, show us something. And if I would have just raised the seed round, people have said, well, are you raising enough money to really prove anything? So what I did was I literally scheduled them both in parallel, told the seed guys I'd be going to the Series A guys within a few weeks, and told the Series A guys that I was raising the seed and I'd be seeing them immediately with the seed money in my pocket already. And it's a gamble, because if I would have not raised seed money, I showed up at the Series A guys without anything raised, they would have looked at me like, what are you doing? But it was, I think it worked out very well. The seed guys, the angel investors, they love the idea, but they also believe we were going to be raising a Series A with high confidence, and so getting in, they get a slight discount. They get to be sort of champions and excited and be part of a round they might not otherwise be part of. And then the Series A guys, we walk in the door, we've already raised a seed round, and we already have that social proof and validation. And so for them, it was actually, in fact, we had somebody try to preempt the Series A from that population of seed people the day before we started the real Series A conversation, which put it on a great footing, because then we already had a kind of a competitive dynamic before we even got going.
And Ben, did you know the seed investors before, or the Series A investors, or both?
I knew some of the seed investors, a few of them. What I found was really interesting is once, it's in Silicon Valley in particular, there's a great community of angel sort of seed investors. And for any particular area, there's people who really specialize in it. It's a unique thing about this area. And so once I found a few people, they quickly said, look, I'm interested, let me introduce you to 3 friends. And quickly this network opened up. And I was able to reach basically everyone I needed to reach within, a couple of weeks. And on the Series A side, I had built relationships to some degree with a lot of these larger VC funds, but only at a very, as much as you can on the outside. And I think that it was, when they heard I was doing something that could be interesting, you get a shot to go show them and prove to them that it's interesting. I mean, it's not a license to go waste their time, but they're definitely, I had enough credibility that they wanted to hear what we were up to.
So the key takeaway here would be that you need to get some social proof, so to speak, for going to the bigger pushes.
Yeah, and I think it's changed a little bit today. I mean, in sort of this, the size of some of these angel rounds has increased, and sometimes people are jumping straight to Series A and raising these bigger rounds. And some of this is going to settle down again. It's sort of cyclic. I do think that you need to decide what your aspirations are. If your goal is to build something that is, a moderate-sized company, you may not want to take a large round. And so taking a smaller round, to show early traction, if you can do that, and you can actually get to really interesting metrics, that's a fabulous thing. If you know you have to raise more, then finding a way to avoid that trap where you raise maybe $1 million, and now you just don't have enough time to go show anything significant enough, and then you're back to fundraising again. That's a real trap. And so I think, if you're going to have to raise more, you have to sort of gut check, is it realistic? But if you can, how do you get the social proof and enough of the elements that you don't have to spend all your time fundraising? Because fundraising is, it's great to celebrate it, but it's not the job of the entrepreneur at the end of the day. It's how do you go put that money to work and actually build a company and hire great people. And if you're spending all your time fundraising, you're not doing the other things you should be doing.
When you started out, what happens typically seed rounds in the Valley, typically Series A rounds, and how did they compare to nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we were getting going in mid-2011, seed rounds might be $250K to $1 million, and a Series A might be sort of $3 to $5 million. I think we've seen that increase, up to maybe by 2x, sometimes even 3x. Yeah. Some of this is a little bit of frothiness that's shaking out, but I think, it's also now, I think things are settling down a little bit. So I think it's evolving. There's a lot more people trying to get into early stage investing. But I think that when you get to the Series A at the real VC firms, they're probably just as selective as ever. If you want the top tier investors at the table with you.
Ben, let's talk about the business model of Platfora.
Sure.
So basically, who are your target customers? Not only by industry, but also by function.
Yeah.
And how did you approach them when you're very early on? And how did this might have changed?
Yeah, so we're building software for Global 2000, for companies that have large amounts of data, like I said, the things like transactional data, of course, but it's a digital world, so you might have web clickstream data and ad data and loyalty or machine data, IoT, telemetry sensors, etc. So all this data, and so we're selling to large companies to do that. Those have complex buying processes in a lot of cases, and so the model for us was to sort of recognize that in the first few sales you do in any company, it's basically the founding team going out and finding those early champions and validating, testing the idea, getting people to sign up for some sort of beta where they can start to engage with the software, and then trying to convert those into those first 1, 2, 3 customers. And so I think we did that, but then very quickly you start thinking about how do I start to hire real salespeople and people who've sold to enterprises, sold to the kind of customers, and so we hired someone who had a background at EMC, we hired someone who had a background at Cloudera, people who had experience with the big banks and others. And those early sales are exhausting, but they're critically important because it's the first time the reality check of a real customer and their demands and testing to make sure your product can live up to that. And then there's various stages of growing up a field organization, and we're still growing it as you scale. I mean, there's phases that different sales leaders, different sales organizations go through. Even post going public, that it's an ever-changing dynamic.
And how did you find the first beta customers? And how did you foremost convince them to take part in your beta program, so to speak?
Funnily enough, when we were just getting going, we happened to be going to a conference called Hadoop Summit. There was, I think within a month of starting the company, we hadn't raised any money yet, even at that point, and I didn't want to go out and announce anything, but I wanted to be at least visible a little bit. So I being kind of scrappy entrepreneur, I quickly went and rented a very small space on University Avenue in Palo Alto to be our first office. Literally just I just wrote a check, nothing. It's 3 desks. And we threw a website up over the course of a couple of days, printed some business cards, and then turned up at the conference and just chatted to people. And people asked questions of, who funded your company, and how many people are you now? And we didn't say anything. We were in stealth at that point. And there was a journalist who I knew pretty well, who'd written about us at Greenplum a lot, who was very curious in what we were doing, and in fact he wrote this profile in GigaOM on us, speculating on what we might be working on, and out of that we literally had a major entertainment company call us up the next day, wanting to know if they could try the software. We hadn't built very much at that point, but began one thread of conversation that then played out over the next 6 to 12 months as we kind of got the software to the point we could start to give them something to really work with. And in parallel, we worked our network. We reached out to people who we thought might be interested at various companies. We asked for, one of the things that I think is important at the beginning is you ask for feedback, you ask for people to test. You're not trying to say, hey, I want money from you, but I have something, here's the value this could bring from you. We'd love to understand feedback on how this might matter to your organization. And finding those key people who might be interested in being just, on the inner circle of providing that helpful feedback. A lot of those will just be maybe friends of the company, but some of them could be the spark that lead to, a purchase down the road. And so, I think the first few were working through those relationships and, also reaching out to people who inbound found us and landed a few early customers that way.
Cool. Most entrepreneurs have a very big vision and they say, okay, this is where I want to go, maybe in 10 years or 20 years.
Yeah.
But still, you need to somehow prioritize and make something like a step-by-step approach, how you want to move forward, prioritize, do some trade-offs things.
Yes.
How did you go about that in the beginning? Just shipping something that's really good enough, but it's fast, and still it's not awesome, but maybe it's like 2x, 5x better than everything else.
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in general in a lot of the lean and sort of MVP type approaches. As long as the minimum viable product is great if you know what your vision is. So what's the right thing to get to that place? If you just build incrementally, that's not enough. The tricky thing in this case was we did have a really big vision. We have a really big vision about transforming the whole way that sort of business intelligence and data discovery happens. And to do this right, I mean, the analogy of the iPhone where you're changing the whole stack means we were really innovating at sort of 3 layers of the low-level driving the Hadoop technology, the in-memory acceleration and building an engine there, and then the visual, the front end, the way you work with data. And this is a lot for a startup to bite off. But we didn't see a way of kind of slicing through that and just doing a piece of it without really compromising the vision. And so what we did was we tried to build just enough of up and down the stack, recognizing that those early customers were going to be, we wanted them to see value, but they had to believe in the roadmap because there were going to be pieces that weren't going to be there for a while. And that meant, really selling a vision in a pretty significant way, and then just progressively building it out. So, my background is in product management. At the heart of what I've done, I've done engineering, marketing, other things, but product management is sort of core to my experience. And also I hired a fantastic VP of products, a guy named Pete Schlamp, who helped prioritize and think about the trade-offs. So we made very hard trade-off decisions along the way, trying to blend design and technology and get the right experience. But it's hard. If you're building something that's, transformative, there's often no super quick, low risk, let me just do a little bit and test it. You have to kind of go far enough along before it's enough that people get the vision. And so that's something that we've gambled on. We raise enough money to push forward and get those proof points. And I think now if we're version 5 of the product, we're mature enough that the whole thing hangs together very nicely. But it's not an easy path. I'm sometimes envious of people who can get proof and traction with 3 to 6 months of work, not 3 to 4 years of work.
Cool. Ben, how are you currently managing and nurturing your customer relationships?
Mm-hmm. We're now at a scale where it goes from managing those first 10 big customers, and big customers, global banks and others, and entertainment companies and retailers, they take a lot of focus and customer success effort. You can't just give them the technology and hope. But when you're at 10, you can sort of muscle through it by just checking in and being engaged and trying to do it sort of in a very ad hoc fashion. We're now well past that. I mean, well past that. And so now it's very much about how do you build this repeatable organization that is scaling and can scale with the growth. And so, as part of this, actually, I'd been CEO of the company for about four and a half years. About 3 months ago, I made the decision to promote Jason Zintak, our president COO, and did this in conjunction with the board, to CEO, and I moved into the executive chairman slot, partly because Jason's this fantastic go-to-market focused leader, superb executive who understands intimately the whole, from sales and sales and sort of acquiring customers and building those executive relationships. Through that, he actually built a few services companies in the past. How do you go build the frameworks for success and the repeatability of that go-to-market machine? And so we're now running at a scale where it's still maturing, but we're handling adding numerous new companies each quarter, and how do you on-ramp them, and how do you make sure you have the right metrics to detect are you on the right track or not? And it's an entirely different activity than how do you get the first 5 or 10 going.
That's true. And when you still continue looking at the customer relationships, so what type of measures are you using for managing it, like conferences, CRM or email marketing, or having calls or walking-ins, and how often you do them?
For customer success or for a new acquisition?
For customer success.
For customer success, here at Platfora, we look at a number of different things. We look at for those customers that led us, we look at telemetry from their systems, so we see how they're using the software. That's invaluable. Not every customer lets us see that, but those that do, it tells us not only are they using it, but how are they using it and what are they doing. We also engage on, for us the biggest test is, are we engaged on new use cases? Are they expanding and increasing the number of users using the software, the types of problems they're solving? Are they engaged with us around things they want to see in terms of the roadmap or the where we're going as a company? And so we have a team that's really looking at those kinds of conversations, measuring what we're seeing back, and also trying to drive new projects and new usage pretty proactively. And when we see customers that are sort of they may have sort of plateaued, often it's because maybe there was some reorg or somebody like they lost somebody who was passionate in driving. We want to make sure that we kind of reignite that virality. We'll kind of definitely re-engage and try to get in there quickly to keep them keep them really successful.
Cool. And let's talk about your learnings over the last years. I mean, this is not the first company that you try to start, but over the years, what have been some of the patterns or learnings that you have seen that you can share with other people interested in becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think for me there's a few big ones. I think one of the biggest is the idea of culture and people. It sounds obvious, but when you're 5 or 10 people at the beginning, everybody's pretty excited. You kind of know where you want to go. It's some level pretty simple. The people you have at that point, it's new and it's exciting. And everybody knows where they want to go, and it's things aren't that complicated at a people level. At some level, what you discover as you start to grow is that the people you hire, the cultural decisions about what you value, start to manifest in ways that you either were deliberate about or you weren't deliberate about, but start to create an environment that often reflects the founder and the early team, but it's something that becomes woven in the DNA of the company. Yeah. And so if you don't take it seriously, if some companies say we don't care about culture, and culture doesn't mean just that you have like ping pong table and food. It's like, what do you value? What matters? When somebody's making a decision, is it they're leaning towards the customer, making the customer delighted? Is it about being fierce and winning at all costs? Is it there's lots of different choices you make in what you value, but those decisions really shape an organization, and they shape who you're going to be when you're 1,000 people or 10,000 people, and those decisions get made early and much earlier than you think. And so it's not indulgent to think about that when you're 3 people in a room and take half an hour, write down, like we literally took half an hour when we were 3 people, wrote down on a piece of paper, what do we value? Yeah. And it really it's still very core to, in many ways, what we're all about.
Can you elaborate a little bit about these values and how you derive them?
Yeah, I think, there's a few things about values that matter. One is, it's got to be authentic to the company. You can't enforce values that you're not living. If somebody writes down a value and it's not about, you're not prepared to go live that way, if you're not already living that way as a company, it doesn't really mean very much. So it has to be authentic. It has to be something, usually it's great if it comes from the team or the team has a role in it. They feel like it wasn't just handed down from on high. And I think one of the biggest things is that particularly the leader. I mean, everybody looks at the leader and the leadership team, but the CEO in particular, and any other founders, and say, do they live by these rules? If there are values, and I've seen companies where there are founders that believe that they're somehow above this. They can operate on their own rules, and everybody just said, okay, then if it doesn't apply to them, it doesn't apply to me. So you either internalize it and make it who you are, or it's pretty meaningless. And I think the other side of this is that as you grow, as a number of people grow, you quickly realize people are complicated. Everybody has things going on in good ways and bad ways. There's all kinds of people have their lives that are outside of work, and as you add more people, you add more of that richness of just the complexity of people. And so, part of being a great leader is, one is you got to be passionate about engaging in that. It's sometimes a messy business. It's not just you hire an HR leader and they handle people. You've got to be passionate about understanding what people care about and how are they internalizing the vision, and lead them with confidence. And I think that's something that has been really interesting and exciting to me. And I think that I enjoy that whole side of it that goes far beyond the technology, the product, etc.
Right. Is there any other advice you really think, wow, this would be so awesome if I would have known that before I started the company?
I think there's something which I did know, but I think it's important, is that I know a lot of entrepreneurs are anxious to start a company. And there's I want to go find an idea because I really want to start a company. And that itch to go want to create something, build something is really, I get it, I've had it. If you have it, it's great to act on it, not to just wait years and suppress it. But at the same time, if you're starting a company, there's an opportunity cost that comes with that. And so I've seen people who are in a rush to start a company will pick an idea that they're not passionate about, but they say, I want to start a company and I'm going to go just do this thing, I'm going to see how it goes. Or they pick something that they haven't really tested the size of the market, etc. And I think that you realize you're spending 3, 4, 5, 10 years of your life doing something that maybe isn't that interesting a market. Yeah. You never really know. The world keeps changing, but I do believe you want to think about, is it a big market? Are you catching, is there some rift in the world that's changing that's going to make this thing you're doing more important? The world is not static, but many pieces of the world don't change that quickly. So if you want to go do something in places of the world that aren't changing that quickly, it's very hard to make things happen. The more you're able to sort of align with the forces that are changing the world and the rifts that are opening up, the more you can be part of a groundswell of change and make that time really worthwhile. And so I do think, in anything I do, I think about like this. As much as I want to start something, whatever I choose is at the expense of whatever else I could have thought of 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. That's not an excuse to just put it off, but you got to gut check, is this the thing I really want to go do?
Ben, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
And for sharing your insights.
Thank you very much. That's great.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And if you are running a company and you really want to understand what is happening there, building some knowledge, and based on this knowledge bring some really awesome, insightful products, maybe Platfora will help you get some insights.
Thank you.
Thanks. Welcome.